let's proceed to your diagnostic procedure or your diagnostic evaluation. So let's say your patient has a respiratory signs and symptoms, then the doctor may prescribe a wide range of diagnostic studies that will be performed to patients with respiratory condition. First step for our diagnostic procedure and the most common na nakikita sa hospital na nire-request is your chest x-ray film or your radiograph. This now provides information regarding the anatomical location and appearance of the lungs. Normally, your pulmonary tissue is radiolucent. Therefore, densities produced by fluid, tumors, foreign bodies, and other pathologic conditions can be detected by your X-ray examination. Sometimes your patient is asymptomatic, but a chest X-ray may reveal an extensive pathologic process in the lungs. Now, your chest X-ray routine consists of your two views, the posterior-anterior projection and the lateral projection. Your posterior-anterior is, yun yung nakikita nyo yung chest x-ray PA, and your lateral projection is nakikita nyo as chest x-ray APL. Now, before your patient has to undergo chest x-ray, there are some pre-procedure that the nurse must ensure. First is to remove all jewelries and other metal objects from the chest area. Make sure na walang buttons yung damit. Mas maganda pag isuot na lang niya yung gown na ipoproduce ng ating radio department. Okay? There are some instances kasi na nakalimutan na may coins or may button dun sa kanyang chest pocket area. And paglabas ng film, the radiologist will read it as a tumor or an obstruction. So, we have produced already a false positive reading pag nagkataon. And then, assess the client's ability to inhale and hold his or her breath. Bakit kailangan nating i-assess? Because usually, chest x-rays are taken after a full inspiration or a deep breath. Because when you take a deep breath, the lungs are best visualized when they are well aerated. Also, your diaphragm is at its lowest level and the largest expanse of lung is visible. If your chest x-ray was taken during your expiration, the film may accentuate an otherwise unnoticed pneumothorax or obstruction of a major artery. Third pre-procedure is that you have to make sure that your patient is not pregnant, lalo na sa woman. If ever man that a pregnant woman is required to have a X-ray, then a lead apron is to be worn to provide protection from radiation scatter. For post-procedure, I'll just tweak a little bit of this. You will not help the client to get rest. Much okay siguro if you provide privacy for the patient to rest. Okay? Now, on this slide, as you can see, this chest x-ray is on a posterior-anterior projection. Kasi sa likod manggagaling yung beam niya. Okay? Now, our next diagnostic evaluation is our sputum specimen study. So, usually, these are called your cultures, under your throat cultures. They may be performed to identify your organisms responsible for pharyngitis. Your culture may also assist in identifying organisms responsible for infection of the lower respiratory tract. Nasal swab may also be performed for the same purposes. Now, for sputum studies, this is obtained for your analysis to identify pathogenic organisms and to determine whether malignant cells are present. It also may be used to assess for hypersensitivity states in which there is an increase in your eosinophils. Your periodic sputum examination may be necessary for patients receiving antibiotics, corticosteroids, and immunosuppressive medication for prolonged period because these agents are associated with your opportunistic infection. In general, sputum cultures are used in diagnosis for drug sensitivity testing and to guide treatment. For your pre-procedure, first is to determine the specific purpose of collection and check your institutional policy for the appropriate method for collection. So either for drug sensitivity, testing ba siya, or for guided treatment or for diagnosis ba yung sputum culture na gagawin. Now, obtain an early morning sterile specimen by suctioning or expectoration after a respiratory treatment if a treatment is prescribed. So generally, the deepest specimen, those from the base of the lungs, are obtained in the early morning after they have accumulated overnight. So instruct the client now to rinse the mouth with water before collection and obtain 15 ml of sputum. You instruct now the client to take several deep breaths and then cough deeply to obtain your specimen. Now, make sure that the patient's cough rather than spits. Using the diaphragm and expectorate it into the sterile container. Now, always collect the specimen before the client begins antibiotic therapy. If the sputum cannot be raised spontaneously, the patient often can be induced to cough deeply by breathing an irritating aerosol of supersaturated saline, propylene glycol, or some other agent delivered with an ultrasonic nebulizer. So, other methods of collecting your sputum specimen may include your endotracheal aspiration, bronchoscopic removal, bronchial brushing, transtracheal aspiration, and gastric aspiration. Post-procedure, if a culture of sputum is prescribed, transport the specimen to the laboratory immediately. The specimen has to be delivered to the laboratory within 2 hours by the patient or the nurse. Allowing the specimen to stand for several hours in a warm room results in the overgrowth of your contaminant organism and make it difficult to identify the organisms, especially your Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And then last is to assist the client with your mouth care. So in this slide, as you can see, this is a sample collection for your sputum analysis or sputum studies. For our diagnostic evaluation under endoscopic procedure, we have our laryngoscopy and bronchoscopy. So a laryngoscopy is an exam that gives your doctor a close-up view of your larynx and your throat. So laryngoscopy uses a scope, a thin flexible viewing tube, which is passed through the nose and guided to the vocal folds or your larynx, and then the fiber optic cable permits the physician to directly inspect the nose, throat, and larynx for abnormalities. But if the doctor uses direct laryngoscopy, this will now allow the visualization of the larynx. This is usually used during your general anesthesia, surgical procedures around the larynx, and for resuscitation. This tool is useful in multiple hospital settings, from the emergency department to the intensive care unit and the operating room. Your laryngoscopy is relatively painless, but the idea of having a scope inserted into the throat can be a little scary. So, eto is your normal laryngoscope. Pero meron na yung iba, may parang small screen siya dyan. Para hindi direct na yung eyes nung doctor is sa mouth nung patient. Para ma-visualize na niya through a small screen. Now, for bronchoscopy naman, bronchoscopy is the direct inspection and examination of the larynx, trachea, and bronchi through either a flexible fiber optic bronchoscope or a rigid bronchoscope. The fiber optic scope now is more used frequently in the current practice. Endoscopic bronchoscopy permits visualization of your bronchial structure. The bronchoscope is advanced into your bronchial structures orally. Bronchoscopy permits the clinician not only to diagnose but also to treat various lung problems. So, sinabi ko kanina, there are two types of your bronchoscope. We have our flexible fiber optic bronchoscope and our rigid bronchoscope. So, anong difference nila? The fiber optic bronchoscope is a thin, flexible bronchoscope that can be directed into the segmental bronchi. Because of its small size, its flexibility, and its excellent optical system allows you an increased visualization of the peripheral airways and is ideal for diagnosing pulmonary lesions. Fiber optic bronchoscopy allows biopsy of previously inaccessible tumors and can be performed at the bedside. It can be performed through endotracheal or tracheostomy tubes of patient on ventilators. Cytologic examinations can be performed without surgical intervention. The rigid bronchoscope naman is a hollow metal tube with a light at its end. It is used mainly for removing foreign substances, investigating the source of massive hemoptysis, or performing bronchial surgical procedures. Your rigid bronchoscopy is performed in the operating room, not at the bedside. What are the purposes for your diagnostic bronchoscopy? Number 1 is to examine tissues or collect secretions. Number 2 is to determine the location and extent of the pathologic process and to obtain a tissue sample for diagnosis by biting or cutting forceps, curettage, or brush biopsy. Number 3 is to determine if a tumor can be resected surgically, and number 4 is to diagnose bleeding sites or the source of your hemoptysis. For your therapeutic bronchoscopy, this is used now, number 1, to remove foreign bodies from the tracheobronchial tree. Number 2 is to remove secretions obstructing the tracheobronchial tree when the patient cannot clear them. And number 3, treat post-operative atelectasis. And number 4 is to destroy and excise lesions. Our pre-procedure, you have before the procedure, a signed consent form must be obtained from the patient, and food and fluids are withheld for 6 hours before the test to reduce the risks of aspiration. So NPO for 6 hours. When the cough reflex is blocked by the anesthesia, so we have to reduce the risk for aspiration. The nurse will now make sure or to allay, reduce the fear, and decrease the anxiety, and administer preoperative medication. Usually, these medications are atropine and a sedative or opioid, as prescribed to inhibit your vagal stimulation, thereby guarding against bradycardia, dysrhythmia, and hypotension. This also suppresses the cough reflex and sedate the patient and relieve anxiety. The patient also must remove dentures and other oral prostheses. The examination is usually performed under local anesthesia, but general anesthesia may be needed for rigid bronchoscopy. A topical Anesthetics such as lidocaine, xylocaine may be sprayed on the pharynx or dropped on the epiglottis and vocal cords and into the trachea to suppress the cough reflex and minimize discomfort. Sedatives or opioids are administered intravenously as prescribed to provide moderate sedation. So have also an emergency resuscitation equipment readily available. This is your BVM or your bag valve mask, and ensure that your IV intravenous access is patent and flowing nicely. Post-procedure. After the procedure, it is important that the patient takes nothing by mouth until the cough reflex returns. Why? Because the preoperative sedation and local anesthesia impair the protective laryngeal reflex and swallowing for several hours. Once the patient demonstrates a cough reflex, the nurse may offer ice chips and eventually fluids. The nurse assesses for confusion and lethargy in the elderly, which may be due to a large dose of lidocaine given during the procedure. The nurse must also monitor the patient's respiratory status and observe for hypoxia, hypotension, tachycardia, dysrhythmia, hemoptysis, and dyspnea. Any abnormality is reported promptly to your healthcare provider. And then the patient is not discharged from the recovery area until adequate cough reflex and respiratory status are present. The nurse will now instruct the patient and the family caregivers to report any shortness of breath or bleeding immediately. We also have to monitor for complications. Possible complications of bronchoscopy include a reaction to the local anesthetic, infection, aspiration, bronchospasm, hypoxemia, or a low blood oxygen level, pneumothorax, bleeding, and perforation. Third endoscopic procedure is your thoracoscopy. It is almost the same with your bronchoscopy. Thoracoscopy uses your fiber optic instrument and video cameras for visualizing your thoracic structure. Unlike bronchoscopy, your thoracoscopy usually requires the surgeon to make a small incision before inserting the endoscope, a combined diagnostic treatment procedure. Your thoracoscopy includes excising tissue for biopsy. Nursing interventions, just follow up care for the patient and to monitor the patient for any shortness of breath, which might indicate a pneumothorax, and minor activity restrictions, which vary depending on the intensity of the procedure. If a chest tube is in place, monitor the chest drainage system, and chest tube insertion site is essential. Endobronchial ultrasound or EBUS bronchoscopy is a procedure used to diagnose different types of lung disorder, including inflammation, infections, or cancer. This is performed by a pulmonologist, and the EBUS bronchoscopy will use a flexible tube that goes through the mouth and into the windpipe and lungs. This is similar to though smaller than the device used during a colonoscopy. The EBUS scope has a video camera with an ultrasound probe attached to create a local image of your lungs and nearby nodes in order to accurately locate and evaluate areas seen on X-ray or scans that need a closer look. The physician might obtain blood work prior to the procedure, and the evening before, the patient will be asked to not eat or drink after midnight. So, NPO muna yung patient, depending on when the procedure is scheduled. On the day of the procedure, the patient will receive an IV to administer medications that will help them comfortable throughout the procedure. Sometimes, anesthesia will be used to put them into sleep. Once they are comfortable or asleep, the doctor now will insert the camera through the mouth to begin the EBUS bronchoscopy. Using the camera and the ultrasound, the doctor now will examine and collect samples from the lungs, which are usually taken with a small needle. The patient may experience a mild cough and a sore throat, but both will usually go away a day later. EBUS bronchoscopy is an outpatient procedure, and generally the patient is allowed to go home after a brief observation period. The patient now will be asked to have someone drive them home from the procedure. Now, the doctor now, the collected sample will be sent and examined for evidence of infection, inflammation, or cancer, depending on why the patient is having the procedure. This will generally take 3 to 5 days, at which point the doctor now will call the patient and will discuss the result and the next steps in the care. Are there any risks for your EBUS bronchoscopy? This is extremely safe, but as with any medical procedure, there is a small risk of complication, which may include bleeding from the biopsy, infection after the procedure, or a low oxygen level during or after the procedure, and a very small risk of collapse of the lungs. All of these complications are treatable but may require the patient to be briefly admitted to the hospital instead of going home the same day as the procedure. Also instruct the patient to tell the doctor if he or she have had trouble with anesthesia or sedation medication in the past. Next, we have thoracentesis. It is the removal of fluid or air from the pleural space via transthoracic aspiration. It is a needle aspiration of fluid from a pleural effusion. This may be done for diagnosis and or therapy. So we have indications for your thoracentesis. For diagnostic thoracentesis, it is indicated for almost all patients who have pleural fluid that is new or of uncertain etiology and is greater or equal than 10 mm in thickness on computed tomography scan, ultrasonography, or lateral decubitus X-ray. Diagnostic thoracentesis is usually not needed when the etiology of the pleural fluid is apparent. Example of this is viral pleurisy, typical heart failure. A selection of laboratory tests typically done on pleural fluid is further discussed in your pleural effusion. Now, normally, there is a thin layer of pleural fluid that will remain in the pleural space. But if there is an accumulation of pleural fluid because of a certain or some disorders, a sample of this fluid can be obtained by thoracentesis or an aspiration of pleural fluid for diagnostic or therapeutic purposes. It is also important to position the patient. A needle biopsy of the pleura may be performed at the same time. The studies of your pleural fluid include your gram stain culture and sensitivity, acid-base staining and culture, differential cell count, cytology, pH, specific gravity, total protein, and lactic dehydrogenase. For therapeutic thoracentesis naman, it is to relieve your symptoms in patient with dyspnea caused by a large pleural effusion. If pleural fluid continues to accumulate after several therapeutic thoracentesis, a pleurodesis or an injection of an irritating substance in the pleural space, which causes obliteration of the space, may help prevent recurrence. Alternatively, the placement of an indwelling pleural catheter can allow drainage of pleural fluid by patients at home. Pleurodesis and placement of an indwelling pleural catheter are most commonly done to manage your malignant effusion. Are there absolute contraindication for this thoracentesis? None, but if there is a relative contraindication, these are the following: bleeding disorder or anticoagulation problem, uncertain fluid location, there is a minimal fluid volume, there is an altered chest wall anatomy, presence of cellulitis or herpes zoster at the site of your thoracentesis puncture, pulmonary disease severe enough to make complications life-threatening, and an uncontrolled coughing or an uncooperative patients. Are there any complications when we do your thoracentesis? There are the major complications include pneumothorax, bleeding, hemoptysis due to lung puncture, re-expansion, pulmonary edema, and or hypotension. Hemothorax due to damage to intercostal vessels, puncture of the spleen or liver, and vasovagal syncope. Bloody fluid that does not clot in a collecting tube indicates that blood in the pleural space was not iatrogenic, because free blood in the pleural space rapidly defibrinates. Before our pre-procedure, there are equipments that you have to gather first. We have our local anesthetic. Example of this is a 10 ml of 1% lidocaine, a 25 gauge and 20 to 22 gauge needle, and 10 ml syringe. Antiseptic solution with applicators, drapes and gloves, thoracentesis needle and plastic catheter, 3-way stopcock, 30 to 50 ml syringe, wound dressing materials, bedside table for patient to lean on, appropriate containers. Example of this is your red top and purple top tubes, blood culture bottles for collection of fluid for laboratory tests, collection bags for removal of larger volumes during therapeutic thoracentesis, and ultrasound machine. So prepare the client for ultrasound or chest radiograph if prescribed before the procedure. So kaya nire-request ng doctor na mag-ultrasound muna prior the thoracentesis is for them to know kung saan talaga nakalocate, para alam nila kung saan ang kanilang puncture point. And now, kailangan i-inform nyo din ang radio department to mark the insertion point. Usually, the doctor would request for a marking. So when marking the insertion point, use a skin marking pen or make an impression with a pen so that the skin cleansing prep will not remove the mark. Now assess results of your coagulation studies because one of our complication will be bleeding. Note that the client is positioned sitting upright with the arms and shoulders supported by a table at the bedside during the procedure. If the client cannot sit up, the client is placed lying in bed toward the unaffected side with the head of the bed elevated. Now instruct the client not to cough, breathe deeply, or move during the procedure. Usually the patient is for the positioning, the patient is required to be in the best position for the patient is sitting upright and leaning slightly forward with arms supported as this diagram. Now, a recumbent or a supine thoracentesis, example is for a ventilated patient, if possible, but best done using ultrasonography or CT to guide procedure. So, eto naman, pag example is ventilated ang patient or hindi siya able to sit upright and to lean slightly forward. We have an additional consideration for your thoracentesis. It can be safely done at the patient's bedside or in an outpatient setting. Ample local anesthetic is necessary, but procedural sedation is not required in cooperative patient. Thoracentesis needle should not be inserted through infected skin. Example is your cellulitis or your herpes zoster. Why? Because it will give you a false positive result, especially if meron siyang gram-negative culture and sensitivity. Positive pressure ventilation can increase the risk of complication. That's why we ask the patient not to have coughing or breathing deeply. Okay? If the patient is receiving anticoagulant drugs, example is warfarin, consider giving fresh frozen plasma or FFP or another reversal agent prior to the procedure. Now, a bloody fluid, again, that does not clot in a collecting tube indicates that blood in the pleural space was not iatrogenic. Only those unstable patients and patients at high risk of decompensation due to complication would require monitoring, so hook them to pulse oximeter and ECG. This slide will show you relevant anatomy. So the intercostal neurovascular bundle is located along the lower edge of each rib. Therefore, the needle must be placed over the upper edge of the rib to avoid damage to the neurovascular bundle. The liver and spleen rise during exhalation and can go as high as the fifth intercostal space on the right liver, and which is the liver, and the ninth intercostal space on the left spleen. So, ito usually ang nagiging puncture point ng doctor. Okay? Now, post-procedure, you have to monitor respiratory status, apply pressure dressing, and assess the puncture site for bleeding and crepitus, and then monitor for signs of pneumothorax, air embolism, and pulmonary edema. I would also include sometimes the doctor would ask for another chest x-ray and anticipate the prescription of analgesia with oral non-steroidal. So analgesia with oral non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs or NSAIDs or acetaminophen is prescribed. Now, advise patient to report any shortness of breath or chest pain, and coughing is common after fluid removal and not a cause for concern. It has been a standard practice to obtain a chest x-ray after thoracentesis to rule out pneumothorax. Now, document the extent of fluid removal and view lung fields previously obscured by fluid. But evidence suggests that routine chest x-ray is not necessary in a asymptomatic patient. When is chest x-ray needed for after thoracentesis? It is when the patient is ventilated, an air was aspirated, the needle was passed more than once, and symptoms or signs of pneumothorax develop.